Stephanie, of course, could not thank herself here, so I think we should all do for having kept the Institute rolling so efficiently and so seamlessly, both the summer and as we gather here at the conference today. It's my pleasure to announce the speakers on the panel and advise them all that you have exactly 5 to 7 minutes to give presentations. I will introduce everyone in the order in which they will speak and then let them take it away. Amanda McMahon will speak first. She's an art teacher at Huguenot High School in Richmond, Virginia. They completed their second semester this year and wrote, second seminar this year, sorry, and wrote a curriculum unit entitled Landscape Keeps Score, Empire Waits Deep Time and Art for Tim Behringer's seminar on landscape art and ecology. Amanda also served as co-coordinator for their seminar this summer. Christina Kirby is a math teacher at William Oberfeld High School in San Jose, California, and a teacher representative for school districts in San Jose. She completed her second seminar this year and developed a curriculum unit entitled Exponential Functions in Evolutionary Disease in Paul Turner's seminar on evolutionary medicine. Liz Isaac will speak third. She teaches third grade learners at Sale Public School in Chinle Unified School District on the Navajo Nation. Liz completed 6 national seminars since 2017. This summer, Liz prepared a curriculum unit for my seminar, Poetry, a Sound and Object, titled Poetry Through Hajot, The Beauty Way of Life. Donovan Spots is a science teacher at Carver Middle School in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and participated in his first national seminar this year. He wrote a curriculum unit entitled Force to Energy, Increased Efficiency Through Intelligent Design in Gary Rudvig's seminar on energy, past, present, and future. Zunetta Kubadzik is an English, history, math, and music teacher at Owen Scholastic Academy in Chicago, Illinois. This summer, Zunetta completed her first national seminar and developed a curriculum unit titled Freedom Dreaming, Critical Thought Through Imagination in Claude Ferguson's seminar on a history of Black people as readers, a genealogy of critical literacy. Looking forward to all their presentation. I'll ask Amanda to take it away first.
Thank you for the phenomenal introduction and the energy here today. Like you said, my name is Amanda McMahon. I teach art at Huguenot High School on the south side of Richmond. And I became interested in Tim's seminar because I believe that intersection of art and environment is where we have the opportunity for deep time thinking. So how do we think, not on the scale of years or even centuries, but how do we think about our actions and their consequences on the scale of millennia and even eons? So you will notice in my slides, our hashtag Huguenot Strong. Like many schools across America, as we grapple with the gun violence epidemic, we got our hashtag after a mass shooting. Nothing puts trauma in trauma-informed pedagogy like having one of your students shot 10 feet from you. One of the symptoms that I wanted to kind of address, the trauma symptoms I wanted to address through my unit is foreshortening. Foreshortening is a trauma symptom that traps you in this nebulous present. Why plan for college, a career, or your future when you feel like you probably won't live past 18? For so many reasons, we can't afford to think like this. And I believe that art history is the way to address this. Teaching art history, especially on a deep time scale. Present, past, and future are not separate concepts. We in the present are products of the past, and all of our actions affect the future. So, and history is not limited to just human history. So, starting off with that idea of the past, my students explored a millennia in the past, looking at Cahokia, a pre-Columbian megacity in what we now call Illinois. Students reflected on what we can learn about the past through art that survives millennia into the future. So we spent a lot of time talking about what pre-Columbian actually meant. I had assumed going into this that 1607, Jamestown, would be our struggle year, but it turns out 1619 ended up being kind of our struggle year, as students really struggled to imagine an America before the transatlantic slave trade. Despite how this horrific oppressive legacy of slavery and anti-Black racism in America may seem eternal, it completely ensconces their idea of history. To paraphrase Ursula K. Le Guin, so did the divine right of kings. Deep time thinking can help us imagine a world before, and it can also help us imagine a world after. Here, a student very massively connects with the idea of how art is related to all this talk of history by saying that culture is material culture. Everything that we make of our culture is our culture. So I really asked them how we can prove inferences on history based on evidence. So if I'm telling you this is an art object that was owned by a rich person, how can you tell? Don't just trust me because I'm the teacher. How can you tell? Facts on your own. So Cahokia was mound builders. They used agriculture, religion, and architecture to exert tremendous cultural and political power over a large area of the Ohio River Valley. And here a student reflects on how they showed this power and control through their art and through narratives that they tell about themselves through their art, and how art can kind of show who we are and what we believe. Like every teacher, I want my students to understand how to find proof, evidence, sources. So we talked about how stratigraphy, the study of how art and objects left in the soil at certain points in history, can provide proof for these historical claims. So if all of a sudden all this pottery for agriculture is showing up in the soil record, what can we assume about what's going on in their society at the time? We went even deeper into the past and explored the geological history of Virginia through scientific illustrations. Here we have a frankly stunning rendition of the mastodons that lived in western Virginia. A student depiction of a bolide hitting what would later become the Chesapeake Bay. They were very startled to learn that rocks have hit Earth more than once. Melting glacier ice creating Virginia's rivers. Phenomenal depictions of the dinosaurs that were native to Virginia. A lot of disappointment that T-Rexes were not on the list. A lot of disappointment about that. And then student depiction of sea life, because Virginia was also underwater for the vast majority of its history. So we have the Paleozoic, we have the Precambrian. And why scientific illustration? Science test scores remain one of our barriers to accreditation, and misconceptions became obvious very early. Here I have the figure that humans have only been around for 0.007% of Earth's history, and when I asked students before telling them this fact what percentage they thought, I had a lot of confident 100%, wow. Which even if you're following the story in the Bible, as many of my students in the South do, it's not, so we had a lot of questions. We had a lot of discussions about that. Moving on to the art of the present, we looked at the art of Richard and Judith Selby Lang to understand the material that's really the material of our layer in the present is plastic. And so students conducted a plastic audit where they brought in plastic that they accumulated in their daily lives over the course of 2 weeks. We treated it like a fine art object and made sculptures from it, and then drew those sculptures from observation. This was a very interesting part of the unit for me because students did not really understand decomposition. So while I thought that we'd spending a lot of time talking about how it's an issue that plastic doesn't decompose, we instead learned that if you bury your sketchbook out back, it's not going to be there in a year because the paper will decompose. Some other reflections on this lesson is I realized that 90% of the trash they brought in was water bottles. As I tried to address this issue of plastic as a material, I also felt like we needed to address the untrustworthiness of the drinking water, that they would be drinking largely plastic water bottles. Richmond has recently launched an entire advertising campaign being like, guys, we promise the water is safe. I got Legionosis, student teaching. And it reminded me of an insult in my hometown. Water person means somebody is stupid, the kind of lead-inflicted stupid that It means you're too poor to buy your own water and instead relies on city water. To paraphrase Tim, it all comes down to class, y'all. It all comes down to class. As we moved into the future, this unit was rapidly becoming about waste, the waste that the past has left for us and the waste we'll leave behind for the future. Another waste that will really define this geological strata is nuclear waste. So when we look millennia into the future, we look at this issue of radioactive waste. So this waste will be dangerous for millennia on a scale far past language, far past government. And so as we try to figure out what could mark these dangerous waste sites, art is the only hope that we have. So at this segment of the unit, we explored the ethical issues that are embedded in every single step of the nuclear life cycle, especially here in the United States, and our role in nuclear history. And students made their own long warnings, sculptures that could mark these waste sites and communicate danger purely through symbolism. So we have students that believed symbolic danger, use spikes, dangerous shapes. Students that were confident that modern symbolism would perpetuate that far into the future. I found it was interesting, this was mostly students studying for their driver's test that really were like, stop signs are forever! Which maybe they will be. Death was another really common sort of idea of danger. So students saying, hey, if you're going into this area and all the plants are dying, you'll probably leave. Dangerous animals, so students believing that, this fear of dogs, this fear of snakes, this fear of spiders will be universal enough into the future to serve as an appropriate way to communicate danger without language. The one that really devastated me was the student that recreated the Mexican-US border. It absolutely devastated me that this student thought, what communicates danger and what will last millennia, and was like, U.S. immigration policy. So the student told me that the green side with the people happily watching TV is Mexico. Oh, excellent. And then the other side is America. And when I asked him for more information, he said that he needed more green paint. All right. I'll keep that devastation to myself then. Thank you, Christian. Through this unit, I really sought to work through trauma with my students, but we ended up seeing the apocalypse not as a singular event, as the trauma as not as our singular school shooting, but rather this sort of ongoing, constant, slow reverberation of terror throughout history. But we also learned that art persists, art survives. So do people, so does hope, and so must we. Thank you very much.
All right, hi everybody. My name is Christina Kirby. I am a representative from San Jose, California, and I'm a high school math teacher. I'm really excited to talk about my unit, which is exponential functions in evolutionary medicine. So one of the biggest issues nowadays is this thing called exponential growth bias. Exponential growth bias is the thought that exponential growth is truly linear. If we think back to the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw a lot of people not heeding the warnings about masking, about self-isolation, and that's very much in part because of this exponential growth bias. They didn't realize that their going out into public without these precautions would spread the disease exponentially. And so that's something that I brought back to the classroom as how can I make sure that my students don't fall into this trap of exponential growth bias and instead really know their difference between exponential growth and linear growth. And so what we're going to do, I haven't yet taught my unit, but what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using the COVID-19 pandemic as a jumping off point for their understanding of exponential growth. So my unit is going to be starting with having students watch a news clip, which are extremely common from the COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of them mentioning exponential growth. But a lot of them don't have the preconceived understanding of what is exponential growth. So what we're going to do is we're going to play a game of tag. One student is going to be patient 0. They're going to have a little string around their neck with a picture of the coronavirus on them. And they're going to have one for somebody else. They're going to run around, play tag. They'll tag somebody else, give it to them. And then that will continue, so they will see the exponential growth pattern. We'll then go back to the classroom. We will graph that, and I'm super excited to see their reactions to the graph. Last year, I did teach a unit about linear functions. Rather than having students solve equations strictly through numerical application, students used real-world scenarios, translated those into equations, and then solved them. And I saw how fundamental that understanding was of having those real-world examples and instances ingrained into their learning. So I'm really excited to have students use that exponential growth understanding to move forward with their understanding of exponential growth as a whole. So once we've done that, students are going to look at exponential growth in different applications, such as disease spread. We'll also look at exponential decay with the application of vaccination. And so I'm really excited to have students use something that they're so familiar with moving forward, and ensuring that understanding. At the end of the unit, students are going to be creating projects in which they research their own instance of exponential growth. They're going to graph these. They'll also use a table, and they'll also create their own word problem. I've noticed that when those things are introduced in silos, they're understanding, but then when trying to piece those all together, there's a lot of confusion and misunderstanding regarding that. And so having all of these be kind of brought together, I'm really hoping that students will not have the siloed understanding anymore, that they'll realize that all of these different representations really represent one type of growth, which is exponential. Moving forward, I'm hoping that students can use the understanding from this unit to be more proactive in, hopefully there's not another pandemic, but in case there is, I'm hoping students can use their understanding to move forward and be proactive in spreading the understanding of exponential growth truly for what it is, and will hopefully try to eradicate exponential growth bias in the San Jose community and in the greater community of the United States. So thank you so much.
Ja, det هبنا شيء Elizabeth Isaac initier أشيين شلون طبعا باشين إذا لاني داش شيء دو تشيني داش نلا شاطودو هاليدي عايزت ناشا. My name is Elizabeth Isaac. I am from Shanto, Arizona. It's a very rural place where if you go over there, you would find all kinds of animals and plants and a nice landscape. So this year, this summer, I had the opportunity to work with Mr. Muhammad, and I am very thankful and enjoyed his seminar, as well as the fellows that were in there. My poetry through Hijong unit here is about the beauty way of life, and I teach third grade at Saley Public School, and it's within the Chunli Unified School District. It's like also located in a very rural area with the, it's an elementary school from K-8, but the district itself has over 3,000 students. So it's got seven schools in the district, but we're isolated out in nowhere near the mountain. But I am with the Dene Nation Fellows, and the seminar was Poetry as Sound and Object with Mr. Faisal Muhammad. Okay, so I picked Hijong and poetry because when students express their feelings, they have a hard time. Being a Native American is not as easy as it used to be, because we're put in a situation where we're also thinking about our own culture, and then when we try to think about the modern society, the Western civilized world, it becomes hard for the students. And it's very complicated where they try to deal with self-identity. And even myself, I was very fortunate that I was raised by my grandparents, and they taught me a lot about connection with the earth and connection with myself. So with that, I became resilient, and I was able to withstand a lot of things, speak up for myself if I have to. Like such as a quick story here. Back in the college days, I was in a professor, there was 3 of us Navajos in there, and the rest were all Anglos. And we didn't do too well on our first test, our first exam. So the instructor came up to us and told us that, I want to speak to you guys after class, and pull us aside, the three of us. And when we went over there, he told us that I recommend that you guys drop this class. So, you know, when somebody defines you or makes you feel like, you know, you can't do anything, it's very hard. And then you just think about, how am I going to overcome this? What does this tell me who I am? So his recommendation was to drop, and I told him I'm not going to drop. I'm staying. The other two ladies did just walked off and said, okay, and they left. And at the end of the story, he came back later at the end of the semester, and he said, you proved me wrong. And here's your exam, you have a B. I said, yay! So, because of that, you know, sometimes I feel like, you know, that bias comes with some of these kids. So you get in a situation, and what do? How can I stand up and speak for myself and express who you are? And it's okay to be expressive about who you are, because that's just who you are. You can't be like anybody else. So my poetry is about being Native American and in perspective from Navajo Nation, or the Navajo. So my unit focuses on Hujel, and that's what I was raised with, what I want the kids to learn, how poetry ties with Hujel and where I want to go with this, and the outcome of what I see. So I created this model about becoming someone who matters. These are the four sacred colors here. We have the Hujel, the white, the blue, and the yellow and the black. They all represent the time of day. So as you can see, the dawn, the daylight, and the evening, and then the darkness. So that's what I thought. That's just my daily thought every day, how I'm going to start my day. So I'm introducing these poems to the students about connecting to the land, the environment, the family, and even to themselves with self-identity. And then the beginning is the students are already, we have this chant that they do every day. It's called the Neculture Creed. And it's to help them set a positive mindset for the day. And they begin with this daily chant, and it describes the feelings and the expectation of oneself each day, in addition addressing the connection with the four sacred mountains and the beauty and the blessing from all directions. So our activity for this one was, you know, poetry is already in our culture. And I just realized that through this, like, wait, there's chants, there's prayers, there's rhyming, there's all these things that we already have, the rhythm and the beats and all. So I decided to just start with this one. So this is what we did. And the kids are the one that's, say this, hopefully this comes on. This is just a little video of what they do and what they say. Okay, so this is what they say every morning, and it's school-wide. So you saw the screen in the back, and this is like a prayer each day to start with who you are, your surrounding, the four sacred mountains, and how you're going to be addressing your day for that whole day and enjoying your work and everything that you're learning to intake everything around you. And the kids seems like, for me, the kids are saying it. They can easily say it. But then they don't know the meaning of it because they're not taught from home. So we had to go back and say, this is what you're actually saying. And it made more sense to them after a while. They're like, oh, that's what I'm saying? And and said, this is what we have to learn about each sentence, and there's a rhythm, there's a pattern, and they understood. It felt like they were able to want to say more, and you hear some of them saying it while they're doing their work now. And then along with the social awareness, interacting with Earth, we were starting with the Eagle poem. The poems, some of the poems that I've chosen kind of resonate with the feeling of living in beauty, and also it makes that connection with the nature spiritually, to find peace and know the inner self. The activity that I did with the students is just like, I didn't have it, it's out there. They have paintings, and then they would write about that poem. I mean, they would create a poem about that image that they create. So this is to respect their self and their surrounding. And then this is one of the fun ones that we did. This is the Blackout poem. This poetry, I found that poetry is, before it was just like writing, rhythm and all that, but then there's more things that I learned through this seminar, that it has a unique side, using images, words such as blackout. So here's an example that we have where the kids just started bringing out other words within their own passages, and whatever they get, they started saying, this is how it should be written. So this is one of the poetry thing that we did. And then having to speak out. When I call this You Say, I Say, because you said this, but I'm saying this way. So this is what I tell them. You say, how would you say this? How would it be most meaningful to you? And then we have Orlando White. He hasn't, that's one of my next thing to do, is to invite him. And he talks about letters and images and how he uses the word images. For example, we have water, but in the middle of the word water, it's twa. Twa is a Navajo word for Navajo. So it's like mixing the language with the English and the Navajo language. And Shanta Brigade provides us with the wonderful images from the cultural perspective. So we're using some of his paintings to write poems. So the students are able to look around their environment and actually have this idea of, what can I write about that? How do I feel, and how can I connect with that image? And then just at the end of the day, just reflecting on home life and the surrounding students who write poetry to express gratitude, being resilient, and reflect upon their own blessings. And in completing the unit, we had I was out for almost 3 weeks. We'll have a special guest. And then we had a wonderful motivational speaker named by the name of Natani Means. He's one of the son of, I don't know if you ever heard of him, Russell Means. He's an activist. He came over and performed for the kids and reinforced poetry and all that for writing with the students. And then our next thing is to make handmade paper and then binding books. And I just want to thank everyone for the support and giving me inspiration as well. I know that I don't say much about that, but I do want to say thank you to everybody, to all you Y9 fellows, the seminar leader, Mr. Faisal Mohammed, Stephanie, thank you, and then the donation team for being here with me. So thank you, everyone.
Hello, everyone. My name is Donovan Spots. I am a teacher in North Tulsa Greenwood District at George Washington Carver Middle School, where I teach 8th grade science. We are an MYP, International Baccalaureate program, which actually will finish their last 2 years at Booker T. Washington High School. I am truly blessed with a great magnet school to work with some great kids. I was selected to take part in Gary Broderick's seminar on energy past, present, and future this summer. It was a great seminar where we learned a lot of things about energy and how green energy is produced, and the great projects that you have going on here at Yale, which was a great touchstone and definitely helped influence everything throughout this, knowing that energy is power And converting that energy into force helps us answer the questions in our curriculum at Tulsa. So, as a science teacher, one of the main things I'm looking at is how to have children understand how force works through the world. We live in a society where I'm constantly competing with TikTok and YouTube videos to try to make sense to children as to how energy can transfer through a system. So in competing with that, I have to put manipulatives in their hands. I have to be able to work with them, not only teaching this, we can set and learn that energy comes in many different forms. You have chemical energy, you have physical energy, you have nuclear energy, you have waves, you have electricity. All these things can be manipulated. We generate them. How do we utilize them? So, every form of energy generation has a physical component, either at the beginning or after. Solar may not have that at the beginning, which all the students want to go to solar right away. They want to tell me, but solar has no moving parts. Yes, but in order to utilize the power generated more efficiently, we have to be able to manipulate the energy coming out. And that usually takes the form of a physical manifestation. So in my unit, I'm addressing Newton's 3 laws. We have 2 Oklahoma standards which clearly address Newton's laws. So my unit is set to make sure that they understand, not simply Isaac Newton had an apple fall on his head and decided, oh, that's gravity, and let's move forward from there. All the different components and pieces, the inertia. It's easy to talk to a football player about inertia. When you have a giant lineman, a small running back can't get through it. But not everybody understands that. We have to find a way to reach all the kids equally. So I'm looking for those manipulatives that I can put in their hand, that they don't have to just go off of what they know, what was part of their life experience. They can experience it right there in the classroom. So moving forward, we are adding trebuchets. I've incorporated a 3D printer. We make all kinds of different manipulatives that we are now able to use in the classroom. We're able to put the math and the science to it. This isn't simply playing with toys. They have to understand the material before they use it. They have to calculate the trebuchet before they use it. They understand, they measure, they take calculations and come up with theories. Are the theories right? No. No, they're not right. They're 8th graders trying to do physics. I mean, we work through it, right? We understand that we don't know everything, but it's a learning process. There is no wrong. It's an experiment. Let's collect some data and find out what we know, what we thought we knew, and what was right. So by them being able to handle these things, and they work through it, and they think they can't do it. Children can do anything you put before them. You can teach them, you can give them these skills, and they act like they can't do it, but I guarantee they can. Why? Because they don't want to be the one standing at that table that says, I don't know how to do this. They love understanding the world we live in. They love understanding how things work. That's what it's about. Teaching them the science of how the world works, how we manipulate the energies around us. From simple fluid dynamics and understanding the best way to build a hydro power plant, either tidal or dams, to a modern wave gear, which is used by Boston Dynamic robots to make sure that everything moves correctly and efficiently within a system. We culminate with our egg drop, which is the great part of it. You know, when we go ahead and go out there, they can see the failure. So we go right from the beginning, understanding how to manipulate force, to the end, understanding how force can fail and how you can protect yourself. All 3 of Newton's laws are addressed in this final project, the culmination project, right from beginning of the trebuchet, when they start learning about Newton's first law, to the end, when they learn about all 3 laws. They have to write a 400-word essay at the end of the project describing the Rube Goldberg machine on how all of them work together. So we have taken from the fundamentals that the Oklahoma Standard lays out for us and expanded it so much more for a richer understanding that my class can truly sink their teeth into. And they love it. I have children who have never liked science that like science. Why? Because we put it in their hands and make them understand it. It's a beautiful thing. Thank you very much.
My name is Annetta. I'm super duper excited to be here with y'all today. A little bit about me. I was born and raised on the south side of Chicago, on the south side, of Chicago. I'm a product of Chicago Public Schools. I did spend some time in private schools, but most of the years were in CPS. And this is my first time here. And I'm super duper excited. Thank you. And so the name of my project is Freedom Dreaming, Critical Thought Through Imagination. So before we do something, I do want us to take a moment to just kind of reset ourselves. Like we're here obviously for like exchanging what we've done and to celebrate, but I also kind of want us to refocus and make sure that we're also not just engaging this as intellectuals or as Y&I fellows, but also as like human beings who are here to take in people's stories and experiences. And so I want to start with this affirmation. Black folks have always and will always overcome the oppressive forces that seek to render us broken and bowed. This is reflected in the joy of my ancestors that sparkles and shines in my song, and my smile, and the fabric of my very being. So let's just reflect on that. All right. So thank you. So I had the privilege of participating in the YNI, specifically in a seminar that focused on the history of Black literacy in America. This seminar explored how Black Americans have historically fought for and valued education, often as a means of liberation. If I had to describe Rod's seminar in 3 words, it would be intentionality, storytelling, and care. When I say intentionality, I'm talking about the way that he designed this process for us. Everything was very scaffolded. When he began, it's like, hey, let's introduce ways that we can think. Let's introduce ways that we can engage with materials versus us just saying, here, we're analyzing, we're doing it now. And so we talked about the 6 hats of thinking. And so things that would frame how we would interact with the text and materials that he gave us. It was also very personalized. Like our last day, he went and pulled out different things. Like, I think you guys will like this, and curated a whole selection, which I won't get into that story, but it was amazing. Also, the way in which he's like, well, this is what I had planned, but I'm gonna go to where you take this. It was also very thought-provoking. The storytelling. And like, I mean, even in the way that he would read some things to us, like adding in a Southern drawl if we were there, knowing when to inflect his voice, when to raise the volume, when to bring it down a little bit. And all that while sharing the different powerful narratives. We explored texts from people like Toni Morrison, books like Self-Taught, Malcolm X, and so many different things. And he provided lots of counter stories to the dominant narrative about the Black experience in America. And also connection. We were able to look at things that happened in the past, but see how that affects us today. Lastly, that other word was care. Okay, Rod was very humanizing. He often made sure that we were okay if it seemed like something was a little bit too heavy for us. He was very compassionate, and it really, for me, left a model of empathy and how we could use that in the classroom when we're engaging with our students. And that care was important because sometimes for me, as I was reading different things, doing different research, like it was hard. It's not new to me. I don't think it's new to any of us. But exploring the text in a deeper way definitely affected me sometimes, or made me feel like moments of despair and sadness, because we still see a lot of the effects from what took place in the past today. Which led me to freedom dreaming. This was one of the ways that I was able to push through by holding on to the dreams of freedom that were embedded in these narratives and the action that was taken to manifest these dreams into reality. As a collective and as individuals, enslaved people harnessed their imagination to invent creative ways to educate themselves when conventional methods were intentionally withheld. School rules became pits in the ground, church basements, And it soon transformed into HBCUs, which are historically Black colleges and universities, and even onward to spaces like TikTok, Instagram. I don't know if y'all heard hashtag learn from TikTok. But the thing that really stuck with me is that no matter the journey, whenever adversity arose, we were able to push through, and it was met with imagination, fueled by that dream of liberation. And so through those different discussions with my fellows and also with guidance from Broad, I began to look deeper into that concept of freedom dreaming. Because being a Black woman educated on the South Side of Chicago, and now an educator on the South Side of Chicago, I was super duper inspired by seeing the courageous acts of imagining a better world and actively working towards it. It was the brilliance, the resilience, the finesse that I saw from Black folks as they started to defy those different laws and societal norms. And that's a source of pride for me. And reading about the innovative strategies for the different ways to teach themselves literacy when it was withheld, I could see my dreams in those experiences. And since it connected with me, I wanted to connect that with my students. So cue up freedom dreaming. Just to give us the definition, freedom dreaming was coined by Dr. Robin D.G. Kelley. And freedom dreams are powerful visions that arise in response to a critical understanding of reality. My unit asked students to envision a better future by drawing on the past. They engaged with the concept of freedom dreaming by analyzing historical and current issues and creating solutions to reimagine their community. My learning objectives were, one, we need to be able to define freedom dreaming, but not just tell me what I told you, like, what does this mean for you? In CPS, we have this thing like, what is the unexpected takeaway? And even though I might want you to get this, there's still more that you can pull from it that I haven't even thought of. And so I also wanted us to exercise critical thinking and problem-solving skills by addressing real-world issues and envisioning transformative change. And most importantly, I wanted them to be able to define and decide what is important to them. A common theme that came up in our seminar was, our kids don't value learning or literacy in the same way that we do. And it caused me to think, well, you're right, it's not the same way that we do. This doesn't mean that they don't value it, but what do they need? What do they value? And how does that translate into what they're learning in school? Some of the teaching strategies that I used, this was heavily inquiry-based learning. I wanted students to explore things through questioning versus me just telling you what it is. I wanted them to experience what freedom dreaming is so that they know you're already freedom dreamers. Even if you don't know this concept, even if you haven't thought that you're doing it intentionally, you are doing it. We often got into discussion and debate. My 6th grade class, y'all, they are very passionate even when they're wrong. And so I really wanted them to be able to like be wrong and be loud about it, but also listen in to what others are saying so that you can then grow from that. And like I brought what we did here at Yale to my 6th graders by incorporating a lot of Socratic seminar and discussions. Also, this was very interdisciplinary, and so students were invited to share their understanding of freedom dreams in their own way. This led to graphic designs, skits, music, and also written narratives, which you hear about from my student real soon. Some examples of some of the work they did. When we started this dream, I talked to them about things that were happening right now. So we looked at the Florida state standards. One of those standards states for social studies that teachers have to include in their teaching that slaves or enslaved people, benefited from slavery, and that they had to use their skills that they got from slavery so that they could be successful in life later. That's what they said, okay? So from that, we looked at explicit meanings and implicit meanings. And that's a strategy that we also did here in seminar. And I asked my students, like, how did this make you feel? Because again, they're already freedom dreamers. And so when they started to think about how it made them feel as 6th graders in Chicago, the question then became, well, what can you do as a 6th grade student in Chicago to affect change all the way in Florida? And what manifested from that was, oh, well, we can do petitions, we can start protests, we can do this. And so we're like, yeah, this is so cool. But then the next question became, well, why are we saying what we could do? Why don't we just do it? And so this is where we are right now. My students have began putting together presentations that they want to give to our principal because they actually want to plan this rally and connect with students in Florida. So here are some examples of some of the slides and things that they've put together, talking about the issue. They planned out skits. They're like, oh, we're gonna use, acting. We're gonna plan and pretend that there's a fight because we're fighting, right, for the rights. And when everybody comes up, then we're like, actually, this is about this. So ways to draw them in on different things. Super fun, different posters that we're putting around the school. I feel like I skipped something. Just really quickly, wanted to show some of the questions that I asked them. So one of the prompts was, if you could imagine a better world or a better community where everyone feels safe and supported, what would that look like? And then these are some of the responses, and they varied from like, it would be great, everybody would be happy, to maybe we would have less pollution. Maybe people would just get better, no violence, different things. So I'm gonna wrap it up, because I know I'm over time a little bit, but I want to end this leaving you with two quotes and a question. So take a moment to reflect as I read these. The first quote comes from Robin D.G. Kelley. Without new visions, we don't know what to build, only what to knock down. We not only end up confused, rudderless, and cynical, but we forget that making a revolution is not a series of clever maneuvers and tactics, but a process that can and must transform us. My next quote comes from Octavia E. Butler. It's my favorite quote. All that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. And my last question that I leave to you, what dreams do we need to nurture today so that we can build the world we want to see tomorrow? Yeah.